Beyond the Parties. I am Jason, your host, and today I just kind of wanted to talk a bit about honesty. So, honesty, obviously, you would think should play a very big part in politics, and to an extent it does. I mean, a lot of people do tend to pay attention to what people are saying and want to kind of sift through and figure out if it's the truth or not. But one problem that you see a lot of, and it's not exclusive to today's day and age, although it certainly seems to have increased maybe as the internet has become more prevalent in our day-to-day lives. But one thing you see a lot of is the spread of misinformation. A lot of politicians, they'll make a lot of claims, and some of them will be true, and some of them will be false. And the important thing is to not blindly listen to these claims, but to actually fact-check them. And you'll see a lot of, especially web pages on places like Facebook and Twitter, or X, I guess as it's called now. They'll want to promote a specific viewpoint, so they'll find memes or they'll find headlines and they'll just repost them, and they won't necessarily fact check. And there's a lot of people out there who probably won't necessarily fact check either, because if they see a headline or something that they agree with, or something that already reflects a view that they believe to be true, they'll just accept it and move on, and misinformation just kind of spreads like wildfire. Now, what's important is a lot of people kind of seem to be under the impression that those on their side tend to be more honest, and that the other side, or that their own side, really doesn't tend to lie that much, and that most, if not all, of the misinformation comes from, the bad guys, the opposite side. To liberals, conservatives always just lie, they cheat, and a lot of conservatives will say the same thing about liberals, and it is certainly a problem when your attitude is, well, my guy I'm going to trust blindly because the other guy must be so much worse. So I just kind of wanted to go through a little bit and examine some of the major players in politics today. Specifically, I want to talk about the current president, our former president, and then our current vice president, and who is running now, and then our potential next vice president, J.D. Vance. So I just kind of want to go through, and I'll be using Politifact, which is a pretty good source to kind of keep track on some of this information. Maybe it shouldn't always be your exclusive source, but one reason why they are kind of nice is because they'll divide everything into categories. So you have true, which they define true as the statement is accurate and there is nothing significant or missing. Mostly true is the statement is accurate but needs clarification or additional information. Half true, which is the statement is partially accurate but leaves out important details or takes things out of context. Mostly false, which is the statement contains an element of truth but ignores critical facts that would give a different impression. False, which is the statement is not accurate. Pretty simple enough. And then pants on fire, which is the statement is not accurate and makes a ridiculous claim. So, I just kind of want to go through because you can, if you use Politifact, and it's really easy to just Google, and you can even Google a specific politician and look them up. They have most politicians that you would ever think of on here, and it'll divide a bunch of their statements into one of these categories, and then kind of go through, explain what claim is being made. And one thing that's really nice about it is it will actually go through and list its sources for its fact-checking. So it'll go through and list the original source for where the politician made the claim, and then it'll go through and list its reasons for why it's saying that this claim was true or that it was not true, and then it'll list all its sources for that. So you can actually fact-check the fact-checkers and just make sure that you can properly verify, okay, yeah, even these people are getting it right. Because it's always important to just not take everything at face value. You want to make sure, especially when it comes to claims that a politician is making, and especially when they're making claims about other politicians, you want to make sure that those claims are accurate and that they aren't just straight up lying to you in order to get your support and your vote. So, I think we'll go ahead and start with the current president, Joe Biden. So, when we go to his Politifact page, like I said, you can even just Google Politifact Joe Biden and it pops right up. You can see they always have a scorecard that has those different divisions that I told you about. And he is scoring at, out of everything that they've checked him on, 8% of what they've checked has been true. 24% has been mostly true. 25% has been half true. 19% has been mostly false. 20% has been false. And 2% has been pants on fire. So, you can see that not a super honest rating. Now, it's important to note this isn't like a check of every single thing Joe Biden has said. President Biden obviously has been a politician for a very long time. He's been president for quite a while. This isn't reflective of absolutely everything. They're just different statements that have definitively been checked. A big point of this site is to just check kind of like the general honesty, but it's also important if you hear a statement, don't necessarily just rely on this, like kind of fact check it yourself. Research on candidates before you vote for them is always super important. But one thing you can do is ignoring the scorecard for a minute. You can check if you want to just search a certain category, but you can also look at the most recent statements that have been checked. So it'll give you a date. So looking at the most recent, what is currently on here, on August 2nd, 2024, Joe Biden said, since Vice President Harris, and I took office, incomes have risen faster than prices, which they rate as mostly true. So clicking on it, you can go through. They give the bullet points, which is, since President Joe Biden took office on January 20th, 2021, wage growth has trailed the rate of inflation. However, Biden said incomes, which are defined differently from wages, and for that, the data backs him up. After adjusting for inflation, per capita personal income after taxes has gone up modestly, after removing the temporary influx of pandemic-era stimulus cash that distorts the data for Biden's first month of office, January 2021. And then it goes through all the actual evidence and facts to back him up on that, and shows that, okay, for the most part, what he said is true. But let's go back. So the very next one that pops up is a statement that Joe Biden made on July 13th, 2024. The idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of, which Politifact rates as false. So going into Politifact, we look, and its bullet points it gives are examples of political violence against U.S. presidents date back to Abraham Lincoln in 1865, who, of course, was assassinated. Lawmakers, presidents, and political candidates have also been targeted. U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords, who is a Democrat from Arizona, was injured in a 2011 shooting, and Republican Steve Scalise, who's a Republican, was injured in a 2017 shooting. The January 6, 2021 assault on the U.S. Capitol is an example of political violence on a wider scale. Some rioters chanted to hang Vice President Mike Pence. And then it goes through and kind of explains that as well. And that obviously is definitely true. I doubt President Biden was meaning to be serious. The context for this is he was talking about the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump. And he was condemning the violence and saying that violence like this is just unheard of against the political violence like this. And obviously that's not true. Political violence has always existed in the country. And we've had presidential candidates and presidents, people attempt to assassinate them. And in certain cases, successfully assassinated. It's unfortunate that that's happened, but it certainly has been heard of in this country. Let's see here. Another statement made May 16th, 2024 by President Biden was the Trump administration handed out taxpayer dollars to a foreign company. Hundreds of homes and farms were bulldozed, and over $500 million in taxpayer dollars was wasted preparing for Foxconn. Which the bullet points they give here are: the Trump administration didn't give taxpayer money to Foxconn, Wisconsin did. Somewhere between 100 and 130 properties were demolished for the project. Not hundreds. Yes, more than $500 million was spent, but officials say it also helped lead to a massive new investment by Microsoft Corporation. They're rating the statement as half true. And then if you're super, super interested just to get an idea of what this looks like, you can go, as presidential race rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump heats up, the Biden campaign is tying Trump to Wisconsin's infamous Foxconn deal. The Trump administration handed out taxpayer dollars to a foreign company. Hundreds of homes and farms were bulldozed, and over $500 million in taxpayer dollars were wasted preparing for Foxconn, the Biden-Harris campaign said in a May 16th news release. And it does link those news releases as well. So if you want to actually go and verify that that is actually what the campaign said, you can go ahead and do that. It's very easy, and it makes it super easy to just kind of, again, use this as a tool in order to just sort of double check things. Continuing on, the statement was made a little more than a week after Biden was at Gateway Technical College's Integrated Manufacturing and Engineering Technology Center in Racine County, along with Microsoft President Brad Smith and Governor Tony Evers, to announce a $3.3 billion Microsoft data center. Biden, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel reported, said the Microsoft Corporation development is a comeback story, playing out across Wisconsin and the nation. The president said that Microsoft plans stands in contrast with the 2017 efforts of Trump and state Republican officials that brought... Oh, God, they did not write this correctly. And state that brought Foxconn to Mount Pleasant. Microsoft is building its data center on land that Foxconn was initially expecting to use for a $10 billion LCD manufacturing plant that Trump touted was the eighth wonder of the world. But the investment did not fully happen, and neither did the 13,000 jobs Foxconn initially promised. Foxconn turned out to be just that, Biden said at Gateway, a con. When we asked the Biden campaign to back up the claim, the campaign essentially restated what was originally said. That's rhetoric, not evidence. Since so much has been written about Foxconn, we started with reports and news accounts. Did Trump hand out taxpayer dollars to a foreign company? The answer to this is a swift no. The original 2017 Foxconn deal called for Wisconsin to provide the company with nearly $3 billion in tax credits if it created 13,000 jobs, and a $10 billion state-of-the-art factory for producing liquid crystal displays, flat screens used in televisions and other electronics. However, the company scaled back its plans. Under Evers, the incentive package was changed to reflect the smaller scope. In 2021, the tax credits were slashed from $2.85 billion to $80 million. The job benchmark fell from 13,000 statewide to 1,454, and the number for Foxconn's capital investment went from $10 billion to $672.8 million. Let's see. All right. In any case, it was state money, not federal money, that was granted to the company. However, then President Trump was certainly center stage in June 2018, along with then Governor Scott Walker, then U.S. House Speaker Paul Ryan, and Foxconn Chair Terry Gou, all wielding gold-colored shovels at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Foxconn Technology Group facility in Mount Pleasant, where hundreds of homes and farms bulldozed? Were hundreds of farms and homes bulldozed? God, I cannot talk today. But the answer to that, although hundreds of residents were moved out to clear the way for the Foxconn campus, the number of homes and farms have been variously put at between 100 and 132 by different media reports. A Mount Pleasant Village spokesperson said officials worked to secure voluntary agreements with owners of about 130 parcels, but other owners said the village threatened eminent domain, claiming their properties were needed for road improvements. According to a 2019 report, the village of Mount Pleasant, by June of that year, had paid over $152 million for 132 properties to clear the way for Foxconn, plus an additional $7.9 million to relocate costs. According to village records obtained by Wisconsin Public Radio and analyzed by Wisconsin Watch. Again, that is linked there. So the claim's second part is somewhat off the mark, in that it referred to homes being bulldozed when it would have been more accurate to say hundreds of residents relocated. When the Biden campaign responded to us, their quote cited hundreds of residents, not homes. Was over $500 million in taxpayer dollars wasted preparing for Foxconn? According to a Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Wisconsin taxpayers were on the hook for at least $583 million preparing for the Foxconn project. If you add in the $257 million from the pockets of American Transmission Company's Wisconsin Electric ratepayers for new lines and a substation, the total rises to $840 million. But was that money wasted? Mount Pleasant Community Development Director Sam Schultz said the village's investment in the industrial park, when it was created for Foxconn, helped attract Microsoft and made it possible to move quickly after the company began to buy land, according to a May 14th Milwaukee Journal Sentinel article. We benefited from the work that had been done before, the ability to start to acquire large amounts of land, and things like an electrical substation that exists already, he said. So saying that $500 million in taxpayer dollars was wasted preparing for Foxconn is a bit muddy at best. Our ruling. Biden claimed the Trump administration handed out taxpayer dollars to a foreign company. Hundreds of homes and farms were bulldozed, and over $500 million in taxpayer dollars was wasted preparing for Foxconn. The claim's first part is off. The Trump administration didn't pay, state and local taxpayers did. The second part is overreach. In terms of houses, the number is between 100 and 130, though there may have been hundreds of residents living in those homes. Finally, although it's true that more than $500 million was spent on preparing for Foxconn, local officials say that the preparation that went into Foxconn is now being put to use for the Microsoft development. Our definition of half-true is a statement that is partially accurate but leaves out important details or takes things out of context. That fits here. So you can see that they break down each statement and then go through, or each part of the statement, and then go through in order to verify each part. So that way they can determine, is it true? Is it mostly true? In that case, you can see that there was definitely a lot that the Biden administration got wrong. And you can notice a thing that they noted in that little article is that when they asked the Biden administration for clarification on the statement, or evidence to back up their claim, rather, they didn't provide any evidence at all. They just kind of reiterated their same statement. And that should always be a red flag if you're asking someone to back up a claim that they're making and they cannot do that, or they come up with an excuse why they won't or refuse to give you your information to back it up. That probably means they don't have a readily available source to back up the claims that they are making. But kind of moving down the list of some of the more recent ones, I'm glossing over. There are more true ones. I'm sort of glossing over those just because right now I'm just kind of showing that all these politicians do actually lie. They all do certainly tell the truth as well. My point here is I really just want to kind of show that most of, not everyone who is running for office is going to just tell you the truth. It doesn't matter what party they belong to. And it is just always important to double check statements. But here's one from April 4th of this year. In a post on TikTok, Joe Biden's campaign said Donald Trump's plan is cutting Social Security for you. The bullet points they get here are in a March CNBC. I don't know why it said on here that it was a TikTok article. If it was a CNBC article. In a post on TikTok. All right, let's see what this says. Joe Biden cherry picks Donald Trump's statement in cutting Social Security. In a March CNBC article interview, former President Donald Trump said of entitlement programs such as Social Security, there's a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting. However, Trump quickly walked the statement back. In addition, his campaign website says that not a single penny should be cut from Social Security, and he's repeated similar lines in campaign rallies. Before the 2024 campaign, Trump expressed openness to major overhauls of Social Security, including cuts and privatization. And then down here it says Biden has repeatedly spotlighted an instance on March 11th when Trump told CNBC that with regard to entitlement programs such as Social Security, there's a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting. On April 4th, Biden appeared in a TikTok with Senator Bernie Sanders. In the post, Biden said that Trump's plan is cutting Social Security for you. And as recently as June 12th, Biden's campaign posted a clip to Threads showing Trump saying in a 2020 Fox News town hall, will be cutting entitlements. Let's see, and then going down to what their ruling is. Biden said Trump's plan is cutting Social Security for you. In a March CNBC interview, Trump said of entitlement programs such as Social Security, there's a lot you can do in terms of entitlement, in terms of cutting. However, Trump quickly walked the statement back. Before the 2024 campaign, the Trump said about a half a dozen times that he's open to major overhauls to Social Security, including cuts and privatization. The statement is partially accurate, but leaves out important information, so we rated it mostly false. Which is fair. And that's also important. Like, it doesn't matter if you like the candidate or not. You need to listen to what they've actually said. And don't just listen to the person you support. Because in a lot of ways, like these two parties, what they encourage is just trying to tear the other party down. Here's a statement from May 24th, 2024, which is half true, where Joe Biden said the last administration, Trump's administration, oversaw the largest increase in murders ever recorded. In their bullet points, they say the number of murders in the U.S. rose by 5,795 from 2019 to 2020, when Donald Trump was president. That's the largest one-year increase since such data began being systematically recorded in the early 1960s. Crime data analysis generally attribute most of the reason for the murder spike to a complex confluence of the coronavirus pandemic and the social upheaval after George Floyd's murder, not Trump's actions. So you can see here, Biden is trying to attribute the increase in murders to Trump and his administration, but that's not actually true. The murder increase did happen, but correlation does not equal causation. Just because Trump happened to be in office does not mean that because he was in office, the murder rate increased. On May 14, 2024, in an interview, Biden said inflation was 9% when I came to office, which they rated as false. Inflation hit 9% during President Joe Biden's tenure, the highest in about 4 decades, but it reached that level about a year and a half into his presidency. When Biden was inaugurated, year-over-year inflation was about 1.4%. Some of the factors that pushed inflation to 9% were in place by the time Biden was inaugurated, notably supply chain problems, but others, including the American Rescue Plan and Russia's invading of the Ukraine, were not. So you can see, again, that's a pretty big misstatement. Just because inflation made it to 9% during his office, obviously what he was trying to indicate is that the reason inflation got to such a high point was because of Trump's administration. And clearly, like, even though some things were in place, others that came into effect while Biden was in office also played a pretty big role in that. And again, it's important to note that the president doesn't have like this kind of ultimate authority. So this idea that the president seems to have sole control over something like inflation just isn't really accurate. Everyone kind of wants to blame the other side for all the problems and praise their side and their party for all the good things that are going on. But in reality, it's a whole mix of factors, and quite a lot of it is beyond anyone's control. Alright, so just out of curiosity, let's go to the Pants on Fire section and see what claims that they've rated he made that were pretty wild. Okay, so here's one. Let's see. Do they have a recent one? Wow. So most of them, so to Biden's credit, seem to be not super recent. Yeah, like some of them are all the way back to 2007. But let's see what's here. So the most recent one we've got is from November 1st, 2022, in a speech in Florida, where Biden said, "On my watch, for the first time in 10 years, seniors are getting an increase in their Social Security checks." So what they say here is Social Security recipients... lost my place. Social Security recipients have received increases in their checks in the form of inflation adjustments for 9 of the past 10 years. The adjustments are based on a key inflation provision member as mandated in the 1972 law. So, just a quick rundown of what they say here to just break down why they think it's such a wild claim that he's making. Just days before the close of the midterm elections, President Joe Biden touted his commitment to protecting Social Security and Medicare and lowering prescription drug costs. But as he spoke in Hallandale Beach, Florida, Biden went factually overboard praising his own actions on Social Security. "On my watch, for the first time in 10 years, seniors are getting an increase in their Social Security checks," he said at the November 1st Community Center event. "That is inaccurate. Under a long-standing law, Social Security cost of living adjustments occur automatically, based on a formula tied to inflation. Seniors have received increases nearly every year in the last 10 years. The White House did not respond to our request for an explanation of Biden's remarks. The White House also made a separate but similar statement on Twitter that prompted criticism. Seniors are getting the biggest increase in their Social Security checks in 10 years through President Biden's leadership," the White House said in a tweet, which it later deleted after Twitter attached a note saying the tweet lacked context. Biden doesn't deserve credit for the increase, which is set by law approved in 1972. The amount of the automatic cost of living increases is determined by how much the Consumer Price Index rises from the third quarter of the previous year to the third quarter of the current year. The provision took effect in 1975. Prior to that, benefits had to be increased by congressional action. In each of the past 10 years, Social Security recipients received a cost of living adjustment, except for 2016, when the inflation rate was low enough no adjustments were necessary. With inflation currently at a 4-decade high, the Social Security Administration announced a cost of living increase of 8.7% for 2023, a bigger percentage than any year since 1981, which is probably what Biden is intending to talk about, but it's not quite the same thing. So they're ruling, Biden said, "On my watch, for the first time in 10 years, seniors are getting an increase in their Social Security checks. In reality, Social Security recipients have received an inflation adjustment for 9 of the past 10 years. The adjustments are based on a key inflation measure as mandated by a 1972 law. We rate the statement pants on fire." So, yeah, pretty big statement to, claim to make there, especially if you can't actually back it up. And then here's another one he made all the way back in 2020 that they rate pants on fire. He says, "I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto, trying to get to see Nelson Mandela on Robben Island." If your time is short. Biden said he was arrested trying to see Nelson Mandela. He was actually stopped at an airport when he was traveling with African-American colleagues. Politifact interviewed former UN Ambassador Andrew Young to confirm the details. Biden changed his story to say that he was stopped, but not arrested. And then if you scroll down to like their whole, because they go into breaking the details down as to like interviewing everyone, and then when you go down to where they give a bit of more context, they say there is no evidence to prove that Biden was arrested in South Africa in the 1970s while trying to visit Mandela. Biden has since walked back his remarks to say that when he exited the airplane, officials tried to separate him from African American congressmen or detained him. This statement is pants on fire. So yeah, kind of just to showcase that even like the current president of the United States will lie and will make things up and will make claims in order to make himself sound like he is much better in certain circumstances. Now, whether or not that's enough to deter you from supporting him, ultimately who you support for president is your own personal choice. It's always best to just be informed, and that's what I want to do, is just, showcase how important it is to just make sure that you're backing up what you support with facts and not just blindly following whatever someone will tell you, because everybody lies. That's just kind of the truth of the world. And especially when it comes to politics, and especially when you have two parties whose goal it is to duke it out and basically win one over the other, you certainly want to make sure that you're backing up why you support your candidate with facts and not with claims that were designed in order to promote one candidate and knock down the other. Now, we'll go ahead and move on to former President Donald Trump, who I feel like his numbers might look a little bit different. Here we go. So, according to his scorecard on here, we've got 3% true, 8% mostly true, 11% half true, 19% mostly false, 38% false, and 18% pants on fire. Now, again, remember, this isn't like a breakdown of everything they've ever said. This is just kind of like an idea of what they've said over time, to get an idea of like how honestly they consistently are. And usually there's some like the bigger claims that you see like in headlines on news. A lot of the times if you'll see it in a headline, you'll see it here. But let's go ahead and start by looking at what he's said that is true here. So kind of ranges, it looks like, from all the way back to when he was initially running for office. All the way back to like 16. So let's see what his newest claim that is true on here. Florida has the highest homeowners insurance in the nation. The industry-funded Insurance Information Institute found that Floridans pay the highest average home insurance premium at $6,000 a year for 2023. The Florida Governor, Ron DeSantis, has signed many bills that aim to reduce litigation and fraud, a driver of high insurance premiums. Industry experts hope that new laws will lead to lower premiums, but that will take time. Hurricane-prone Florida will continue to face high costs. And in their kind of like ruling, they say multiple rankings by industry-related groups back up Trump's statement. It will take time to see whether several laws signed by DeSantis can bring down costs. Some measures were designed to reduce litigation, a driver of rising premiums. However, Florida will likely always remain one of the higher states in the nation for insurance because of hurricanes. Moving on, the next one they have on here. Murders this year have spiked 27% in Philadelphia. According to their bullet points here on Politifact, Trump said murders are up sharply in Philadelphia this year compared to last year. A city crime data shows that's correct. Violent crimes such as rape, robbery, and some types of aggravated assault have fallen in Philadelphia amid the coronavirus pandemic. One day last month, 23 people were shot across Philadelphia, and the most in a single day since at least 2013. And this isn't current. This is July 22nd, 2020. But again, another true statement. Back in 2019, Trump said food stamp participation hits 10-year low. This is, I guess, back before they put like the actual bullet points on there. Or the ruling. He's correct. The abnormally low SNAP participation in February 2019 was due to benefits for that month being distributed in January 2019 because of a government shutdown. We rate this true. So not a lot of more recent, truer statements. Again, not indicative. He does have more mostly true here as well. He said, we banned transgender people from serving in the military on March 4th, 2023. According to the bullet points, during his presidency, Donald Trump proposed a policy banning transgender people from serving in the military. After years of legal challenges, the administration enacted a policy that banned transgender people from newly enlisting in the military, but allowed current members to continue serving if they met a certain criteria. Advocates described the policy as a ban, but Trump's own administration rejected this characterization. Biden rescinded the policy. They rated this as mostly true. And again, that's because Trump did enact a rule that did ban newly enlisted transgender members, but if they were already a part of the military, if they met a certain criteria, they could stay on, so it wasn't like a blanket ban the entire time. It is now mostly not in effect, or it's actually not in effect at all because Biden rescinded it. And that is the last one that is on here until we get back to 2020 during COVID. Let's see. On September 24th, 2020, in a mostly true statement they've rated here, Trump said, for example, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, my administration implemented a program to provide any individual without health insurance coverage access to necessary COVID-19 related testing and treatment. According to the bullet points here, President Donald Trump's executive order said his administration created a program to provide uninsured people with access to COVID-19 testing and treatment, tapping into funding from economic relief packages to reimburse healthcare providers for such care. How these funds provide coverage access to care is hard to determine. Experts say a more comprehensive solution would have been preferred. Medical providers welcome the reimbursement, but hospitals say limits in the program mean a portion of uninsured patients are ineligible. So when he makes that claim, it doesn't really cover everyone, or it didn't at the time, and so it was mostly true, but not quite 100%. But let's go ahead and just look directly more at Trump's more recent Politifact rulings here, or ratings, I guess, not really rulings. If this wants to work, 1 second here. All right, there we go. So on July 24th of this year, Trump made the statement, we are losing 300,000 people a year to fentanyl that come through our border. We had it down to the lowest number, and now it's worse than it's ever been, which Politifact rates as pants on fire. So, looking in here, former President Donald Trump said in a recent campaign rally that more than 300,000 people die per year from the synthetic opioid fentanyl. That number is significantly higher than recorded figures. Trump also claimed that fentanyl deaths were at the lowest during his administration, something government statistics contradict. Although fentanyl deaths continued to climb after Trump left office and only recently started to plateau, experts say his characterization of the death toll is incorrect. So going into more details to what exactly is said here, former President Donald Trump claimed at a recent campaign rally that more than 300,000 Americans are dying each year from the synthetic opioid drug fentanyl, and that the number of fentanyl overdoses was the lowest during his administration and has skyrocketed since. We're losing 300,000 people a year to fentanyl that comes through our border, Trump told his supporters at a July 24 campaign rally in Charlotte, North Carolina. We had it down to the lowest number, now it's worse than it's ever been, he said. Trump's figures appear to have no basis in fact. Government statistics show the number of drug overdose deaths per year is hovering at around 100,000 to 110,000, with opioid-related deaths at about 81,000. That's enough that the government has labeled opioid-related overdoses an epidemic, but nowhere close to the number Trump cited. Moreover, though the number of opioid deaths have risen since Trump left office, it's incorrect to claim that they were the lowest while he was president. Numbers are likely higher than reported, but nowhere near Trump's claim. Trump's campaign National Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, I know I'm butchering some names here, but wouldn't comment specifically on the source for Trump's statistics, but instead sent KFF Health News an email with several bullet points about the opioid, I cannot say that word today for some reason, crisis under the heading "Drugs Are Pouring Over Harris, Open Border into Our Communities." One such bullet noted that there were 112,000 fatal drug overdoses last year, linked to a story from NPR reporting that fact, directly rebutting Trump's own claim of 300,000 fentanyl deaths. So you'll notice here that Trump's campaign's own source that was sent actually contradicts the claim that is being made. Additionally, the number NPR reported is an overall figure, not of fentanyl-related deaths only. A more recent government figures estimated that there were 107,543 total drug overdose deaths in 2023, with an estimated 74,702 of those involving fentanyl. Those figures were in line with what experts on the topic told KFF Health News. The number of actual deaths is probably significantly higher. Andrew Kolodini, medical director of the Opioid Policy Director Research Collaborative at Brandeis University, noting that many such overdose deaths go uncounted by government researchers, but I don't know where one would get the number of 300,000. Trump's claim that the fentanyl deaths were the lowest during his administration and are now worse than ever is also off the mark. Overdose deaths, specifically those from synthetic opioids such as fentanyl, started climbing in the 1990s. When Trump took office in January 2017, the number of overdose deaths related to synthetic opioids was about 21,000. By January 2021, when he left the White House, that tally was nearing 60,000. Data from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention's National Visit Statistics System shows. Deaths involving synthetic opioids continue to increase after Trump left office. There's some truth to saying that there are more Americans dying of opioids than ever before, our Kolodny said. But again, if you were to look at the trends during Trump administration, deaths just pretty much kept getting worse. In the last year, though, statistics show that overdose numbers have plateaued or fallen slightly, though it's too soon to say whether that trend will hold. So ultimately, you can see that that's a pretty big claim to make, that they were the lowest that they've ever been during his presidency, and then all of a sudden now they've skyrocketed. And clearly it's not true, according to all the data that's showing at least. On that same day, they have on here, Donald Trump said Vice President Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote to cut, as you know, Medicare by $273 billion. She cast a vote to cut Medicare, and they are rating this as false. So former President Donald Trump falsely claimed at a recent campaign rally that Vice President Kamala Harris cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate to cut Medicare by $273 billion. Trump appears to be referring to her vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, a sweeping climate and healthcare measure. A government analysis estimated the law would reduce Medicare spending by $237 billion, but experts say that doesn't equate to a cut in services. Severe health policy analysts described by the law's healthcare provisions as a win-win for consumers and the government, with both expected to pay less for prescription drugs overall. So, according to the actual facts of the data, her vote actually helped Medicare, helped it become cheaper for people, and he and Donald Trump here was saying that she cut it, implying that it was like the actual services she was cutting, when in fact she was cutting spending, but it was more considered, I guess you could say, not necessary spending. Let's So, photo, let's see what this says. So on August 11th, 2024, photo of Kamala Harris's August 7th rally near Detroit was AI generated and there was nobody there. Attendees picture didn't exist. Okay, so Trump made a claim here that showed a picture of Kamala Harris's rally to run for president. And he claimed that the audience in that picture was AI generated. And that there really was nobody there, and that the pictures floating around that show that a jam-packed audience was that they were people that didn't exist. It was all AI. So the bullet points here say local news reports and dozens of photos and videos from local and national media outlets documented an August 7th Kamala Harris-Tim Walz campaign rally at Michigan's Detroit Metropolitan Airport. The photos and reports show that thousands of rallygoers attended the event. An expert on detecting manipulated images analyzed the photo and found no evidence it was generated by artificial intelligence or manipulated. So going into more depth here, former President Donald Trump is keen to boast about his crowd sizes and attack his political rivals over theirs, but his August 11th claim that a 2024 opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, used artificial intelligence to paint a picture of a non-existent crowd at one of her events upped the ante on election year attacks. So in his actual post, Trump said on Truth Social, "Has anyone noticed that Kamala cheated at the airport? There was nobody at the plane, and she AI'd it. She showed a massive crowd of so-called followers, but they didn't exist. She had nobody waiting, and the crowd looked like 10,000 people," he wrote. 1 minute later, Trump posted again, "Look, we caught her with a fake crowd. There was nobody there." Trump's claim is baseless. Thousands of people attended the August 7th Harris campaign event in Romulus, Michigan, a southwest suburb of Detroit. Dozens of photos and videos of the event, including journalists at Getty Images and the Associated Press, show the Harris-Walz supporters gathered at Detroit's Metropolitan Airport for the rally. And they do show the actual videos, they link to sources to show that it was actually a jam-packed rally. So his claim that it was AI generated is definitely not true. And it's unfortunate that that's where we're coming to in terms of, I guess, political attacks. But in today's day and age, it's even more scary since people can use AI to create those images. But no, it's something where he's trying to discredit a crowd that certainly did exist, and it's easy to back up. And that's why you should never just believe or disbelieve what you're being told. Take a look, because usually in something like that, there are always other sources to back it up. On August 8th, Donald Trump said his January 6th, 2021 speech on the White House ellipse drew the same number of people as the 1963 March on Washington, where Martin Luther King Jr. gave his "I Have a Dream" speech, which they characterize here as false. So the bullet points here. The House Select Committee that investigated the event of January 6, 2021 estimated 53,000 people attended President Donald Trump's speech at the White House. The National Archives say 250,000 people attended Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech on August 28th, 1963 during this March on Washington. So already right there, all the numbers just don't add up. It's a claim, again, that is pretty easily proven false. And a lot of these claims that these politicians make, you'll see that's kinda how it is. Most of the time, there will be claims made that are pretty easily verifiable or not verifiable. So on August 3rd, in a mostly false statement here, Donald Trump said Kamala Harris supports mandatory gun confiscation. So the bullet points here say Kamala Harris is a 2019 presidential primary candidate. Said, "I support a mandatory gun buyback program for assault weapons. We found no examples that she supports mandatory confiscation now, and the majority of guns sold in the U.S. are handguns." Former President Donald Trump used the present tense when he said Harris supports mandatory gun confiscation. The Harris campaign told the New York Times that she supports banning assault weapons but not requiring their sale to the federal government. As vice president, Harris has urged states to pass red flag laws in support of federal gun safety legislation that included funding for mental health and social and school security resources. And then in their ruling, they reiterated that Trump said Harris supports mandatory gun confiscation. While running in the 2019 presidential primary, Harris said, "I support a mandatory gun buyback program for assault weapons. This would not cover all guns. Handguns, for example, are the most popular." Trump used the present tense when he said that Harris supports mandatory gun confiscation. The Harris campaign told the New York Times that she supports banning assault weapons, but not a requirement to sell them to the federal government. We could find no examples that she currently supports mandatory confiscation. So basically here you see he's taking something that Harris said back in 2019 when she was originally running for president and kind of twisting it because supporting a mandatory buyback program for assault weapons is not the same as a mandatory gun confiscation. And it's also different if her views have changed, and now she's saying that she doesn't support that either, although she does still support an assault rifle ban, which is typically pretty common nowadays for Democratic candidates. But moving on to another pants on fire here, July 31st, 2024, Donald Trump said Kamala Harris was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person. All right, so let's see what this says here. And so this was, July 31st, 2024. In a contentious appearance at the National Advocation of Black Journalists, an annual conference in Chicago, former President Donald Trump argued with moderators over their questions and opened the conversation accusing Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democrats' presumptive presidential nominee, of recently becoming black. When asked whether he agreed with some Republicans characterizing Harris as a DEI hire, Trump launched into an unwieldy, and so DEI, that's a diversity hire, I believe is what they're saying. So someone who was hired purely, basically just for her race. But Trump launched into an unwieldy attack claiming Harris had always promoted being Indian and that he didn't know whether she was black. She, quoting him, "She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know. Is she Indian or is she black?" Trump said July 31st. "I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person." Trump tried to double down on Truth Social after the event, sharing a video of Harris with an Indian actress, Mindy Kaling, in which Harris said she is Indian. The video isn't evidence that she didn't also identify with her black heritage. This is a false mischaracterization of Harris's background and heritage and how she has spoken about and identified with her race and ethnicity. Trump's attack isn't new and harkens to the birthism conspiracies. We won't get into that right now. Harris, born of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, has identified as a black woman who grew up in a multicultural household. These kinds of claims reflect a poor understanding of history and the fluid nature of various interpretations of racial identity in the United States, race and politics, experts say. And basically what it comes down to is, and let's see what their ruling says. That's just said that. Harris, born of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, is identified as a black woman and grew up in a multicultural household. She attended a historically black university, pledged a historically black sorority, and has given interviews and written about her experience embracing her Indian culture while living as a black woman. So basically what it comes down to is you can have, especially here in America, where we're kind of like a melting pot of all sorts of different cultures and different countries just kind of together, it's entirely possible for you to have multiple heritages, and just because you celebrate one doesn't mean you also don't celebrate the other. So again, something that's kind of doesn't seem like he's necessarily been listening to what she was saying, and is just kind of like making statements off the top of his head, as we kind of saw with Biden too a little bit. But yeah, let's move on from Trump now. We'll go to Kamala Harris. So looking at her scorecard here, she has 11% true, 36% mostly true, 7% half true, 25% mostly false, 19% false, and 0% pants on fire, actually. So good job for Kamala Harris on here. First one we've looked at who has 0%. But let's just take a look at what she said was true again. So her more recent one on here, July 18th, 2024, in a campaign event in North Carolina, she said Project 2025 would end Head Start. So for those of you who don't know what Project 2025 is, and I may end up making an episode where I talk a little bit more in depth about it, but it's basically this kind of a platform that several more right-leaning Republicans have written up as their idea of what the Republican Party platform should essentially be should Trump win office. Trump himself has claimed not to be associated with it, mostly because there are some... It takes things pretty far and gives the federal government quite a lot of power in order to enforce certain things. But one of the claims that Kamala Harris is making here is that it would end Head Start. And just like it says here, Head Start is a federally funded program that supports early education and other services for low-income Americans. The Project 2025 Conservative Policy Blueprint says on page 482 that it would eliminate the Head Start program. And again, it links directly to it. But as it says here, she is correct about the Project 2025 would do with Head Start. The Conservative Policy Blueprint says on page 482 that it would eliminate the Head Start program. We rate the statement as true. So something pretty easy to verify there. Whether or not you support that, that's, again, entirely up to you. Obviously, where they're coming from with Project 2025 is they feel that the government shouldn't be funding private individuals or households or supporting people like that. Liberals obviously kind of view the role of government a little bit differently. But another more recent claim she had here. So on January 29th, she said postpartum Medicaid coverage expanded from 3 states to 43 states because of the Biden administration, which they also rate as true. As of January 2021, Illinois, New Jersey, and Virginia were the only states in which Medicaid subsidized 12 months of postpartum coverage. Today, 43 states have Medicaid coverage until 12 months postpartum. The 2021 American Rescue Plan expanded Medicaid postpartum coverage until May 2023. The 2022 Consolidated Appropriations Act, which President Joe Biden signed into law in 2023, gave states the option to make the expansion permanent. And then, as they say in their ruling, in 2021, that when the Biden administration took office, Illinois, New Jersey, and Virginia were the only states that had 12 months postpartum Medicaid coverage. Now 43 states have it. Biden signed a 2021 law that allowed states to temporarily expand Medicaid postpartum coverage until May 2023. Ended up signing a law in 2023 that allows them to make it permanent, which many states have chosen to do. And then on January 22nd in 2024, she said, today in America, 1 in 3 women of reproductive age live in a state with an abortion ban, which Politifact rated as true. And as they say in the bullet points here, about 21.5 million women and girls of reproductive age live in states that ban abortions completely, or after 6 weeks of pregnancy, census data shows. That's about 29% of women ages 15 to 49. When adding in states that ban abortion after 12 or 15 weeks of pregnancy, the number of affected women grows to about 25 million, or about 40%. And as they say in their ruling, about 21.5 million of reproductive age. That's about, yeah, they say the same thing there. But even more women live in states where abortion is banned later in pregnancy, with adding states that ban abortion after 12 to 15 weeks of pregnancy. The number of effective women grows to about 25 million, or 40%. So, yeah. So, definitely some true statements from her that are easily verifiable. But looking at, like, the more recent statement she had here, the most recent one that pops up here is on July 30th, 2024, in a rally in Atlanta, Kamala Harris stated that Donald Trump intends to cut Medicare, which Politifact rated as mostly false. Looking at the bullet points here, they say former President Donald Trump has said repeatedly during the 2024 presidential campaign that he will not cut Medicare. During his presidency, Trump released 4 successive annual budgets that proposed cutting Medicare. However, experts are divided on how much those cuts would have hurt beneficiaries had they been enacted. And again, here you see kind of a similar situation of Trump accusing Kamala Harris of wanting to ban gun, or essentially force you to sell your gun back to the government. She only proposed doing that for assault rifles and back in 2019, and now has since been saying that that is not something she supports. Although she does still support an assault rifle ban, she doesn't support a mandated buyback. Here you have a similar situation where back during his presidency, Trump tried to release budgets that would have proposed cutting Medicare, although experts are pretty divided as to how much that would have hurt benefits anyway. So you're kind of seeing what we saw before with like cuts to social programs, but they're not really cuts to social programs. The benefits are staying the same and they're actually cheaper for everyone. So kind of the same thing here. She's sort of misrepresenting what Trump said by taking something that he was doing a few years ago and applying that to his campaign now, even though it's contradicting what Trump at least is openly saying, and so far there hasn't been a reason to dispute that. Here's another one. She said on July 30th, Trump intends to cut Social Security. In his earlier campaigns and before he was a politician, Trump said about half a dozen times that he's open to major overhauls of Social Security, including cuts and privatizations, most recently in a March 2024 CNBC interview. So this is actually, she's basically saying the same claim that Joe Biden was saying about Trump, that he plans to cut Social Security, which, as we've already seen, and as we already went over, is not really true. But here she has a video that she posted on X that she says is J.D. Vance endorsing Project 2025, on which the bullet points here say, a video shared by Kamala Harris's presidential campaign on X does not show Republican vice presidential nominee Senator J.D. Vance endorsing Project 2025. It was recorded in 2021, before Project 2025 existed. Democrats have linked Project 2025 to President Donald Trump when attacking his proposals, but the Heritage Foundation produced guide is neither an official Trump campaign position nor a Republican Party platform. Vance has expressed support for some, but not all, of the ideas promoted in Project 2025. Trump and Vance have rebutted claims that they support it. And here it shows the actual post where Kamala's campaign posted a video which they claim is Vance supporting 2025. And in the post, they say J.D. Vance endorses Project 2025. And what Vance says in here is, we really need to be really ruthless when it comes to the exercise of power. I don't think there's a compromise that we're going to come with unless we overthrow them in some way. We're gonna keep losing. Now I believe, let me see if it has the context for what he's saying, because so what that was, oh yeah, it does. So what did Vance say? The Federalist, a conservative news outlet, first posted this video of Vance in May 18th, 2021. It's on its YouTube channel. Vance launched his Senate bid in early July 2021. The clip from the Harris campaign X post, so she was saying that her campaign was making the claim that he was talking about Project 2025, and that was him endorsing it. Obviously, with this being released several years before Project 2025 existed, that can't be true. And the context for what Vance said is, I think part of the answer is that the next time that we get power, whether it's in the Senate or the House or the presidency, we're talking President Ron DeSantis in 2024 or President Donald Trump in round two in 2024. I think the thing that we have to take away from the last 10 years is that we really need to be really ruthless when it comes to the exercise of power. I was talking about this with someone earlier today, where you remember there was some threat that congressional or Senate Republicans made. If you get rid of the filibuster, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And you actually look at it, it's like, well, this is not that interesting. Like, and then the guy who was interviewing him was like, we're going to actually deliver the promises we've made for decades. And Vance's response was, right, this is the threat. If you get rid of the filibuster, we're going to do this stuff. They're talking about expanding the Supreme Court. They're talking about adding 2 senators from heavily Democratic places. And it kind of goes on, but basically his context is he's saying that the Republican Party should be much more ruthless in using their power when they're elected, and they should be much more pushful. They should push a lot more when it comes to trying to push their views through. Again, whether or not you agree with this, you can definitely talk about that. But talking about, they actually quote Vance here on Project 2025, actually talking about it, and he says, I think most Americans couldn't care less about Project 2025. I've reviewed a lot of it. There's some good ideas in there, Rob, but there's some things that I disagree with. But most importantly, it has no affiliation with the Trump campaign. So you can see that this is a video that was posted out of the context that the Harris campaign just kind of posted without fact-checking it, without verifying it, just because it sided with what they already believed and what they wanted to believe, and it promoted their message, so they went ahead and just posted it, and a lot of people spread it thinking it was true, and unfortunately it turned out to be a pretty misleading video. And that's the thing about videos, is you can record people and then take their recordings out of context, and you can make videos look like whatever you want. Definitely not super great. But then let's move on really quick before we wrap up to JD Vance. And on his scorecard here, he has 7% true, 7% mostly true, 15% half true, 23% mostly false, 23% false, and 23% pants on fire. So, a lot more evenly spread, but leaning a little bit more on the dishonest side. But the very first thing that comes up here, something he said August 7th, they actually rate as true, which is, he said that Tim Walz being Kamala Harris's running mate, said he carried weapons in a war, but he has not spent a day in combat zone. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, in a 2018 video that Kamala Harris campaign circulated on social media in August, said he wanted to get weapons of war that I carried in war off the streets. Walz served 24 years in the American National Guard, winning honors for sharpshooting and weapons training, but he has acknowledged he didn't see combat duty. A Walz spokesperson said the governor misspoke. And if you go down to their ruling, although Walz used weapons in training and trained colleagues to use them during his long military career, his 2018 statement implied that he carried weapons on a battlefield, which he did not. Walz misspoke, his campaign said. So first thing that pops up here for JD Vance is actually true. Tim Walz has not actually seen combat. That is also the only thing that pops up here that they have rated as true. So what they have here are mostly true. It says 50% of venture capital goes to California. Most of the rest of it goes to New York and Massachusetts. And in their ruling here, they said, Vance is largely correct, but doesn't describe the situation with precision. Data from a trade association showed that California received 55% of venture capital money, followed by New York at 10.6% and Massachusetts at 8.9%. If we looked at the number of deals closed that year, the 3 states added up to 52%. That left almost half of the deals for the rest of the country. So the state is mostly true, although he leaves out some important details there. But continuing down his more recent statements, let's see, on August 7th, J.D. Vance said, when Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, do you know what he did? He dropped out of the army and allowed his unit to go without him, which they rate as mostly false. So the details here are the bullet points. They say Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz served in the Nebraska and Minnesota National Guards for 24 years. Walz has said he retired in May 2005 to run for Congress. He submitted retirement paperwork 5 to 7 months beforehand. After Walz filed candidacy for paperwork in February 2005, his battalion received a March 2005 notification for potential, not definite, deployment within 2 years, not immediately. Walz's battalion was not officially ordered to go to Iraq until July 2005, 2 months after Walz retired. And then, going down to their ruling. Vance's statement ignores that Walz's unit was not officially ordered to go to Iraq until 2 months after Walz officially retired. After 24 years of military service, Walz said he retired from the Minnesota National Guard in May 2005 to run for Congress. He had submitted his retirement paperwork 5 to 7 months beforehand. He filed candidacy paperwork for February 2005. There's an element of truth in Vance's statement because in March 2005, before Walz officially retired, his battalion was notified of possible deployment to Iraq within 2 years. Walz was aware at the time of his retirement that deployment could be possible, and one of his fellow Guard members described Walz's retirement decision as very heavy. But the March 2005 notification gave a time frame of 2 years for a possible, not definite, deployment that would not occur immediately, which is the way Vance's statement framed it. So again, Vance kind of makes it sound like the minute Walz got his notification that his unit was going to be deployed, he just submitted his retirement paperwork and left. He was already in the process of retiring at the point, and when they finally got the notification that the unit was leaving, he was already retired. So, definitely a mostly false statement there. On July 28th, 2024, he said that Vice President Kamala Harris is calling for the end of the child tax credit, which they rate here as pants on fire. Vice President Kamala Harris has repeatedly expressed support for the child tax credit. The Biden administration approved the 2021 America Rescue Plan, which expanded the child tax credit that year to $3,600 per child younger than 6, and $3,000 per child ages 6 to 17. The current amount is $2,000 per child up to age 16. The administration has pressured Congress to make the more generous credits permanent. So you can see there, and if we go down to the ruling, I think they kind of just say the same thing. But let me see if they have an actual quote here from Harris. Oh yeah, so here, and they even cite the link to it, Harris called the increased child tax credit one of the most impactful parts of the American Rescue Plan. So she's very openly and consistently supported the child tax credit, and so it is kind of an odd claim to make that she is calling to end it when that's not true. Obviously, again, that seems to be a claim that's being made just to rally an audience. And again, that's why it's so important to verify these claims. And in February 12th, 2024, he said the Ukrainian supplemental includes a hidden impeachment clause against President Trump, which they're rating as false. So, H.R. 815, the 2024 National Security Act, dictates how money should be spent on certain Department of Defense matters, including aid for Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, and Taiwan. It does not mention impeachment. Because it is the president's job to spend congressionally appropriated funds, experts said whoever is elected president in 2024 will be responsible for spending the money allocated in the bill if it becomes law. The bill does not target former President Donald Trump. It would apply the same way to President Joe Biden should he be reelected. So down here, it has the actual what he said, which was buried in the bill's text as an impeachment time bomb for the next Trump presidency if he tries to stop funding the war in the Ukraine. Vance wrote in a February 12th X post. And then these funds expire on September 30th, 2025, nearly a year into the possible second term of President Trump. Vance wrote in the memo, these are the exact same accounts President Trump was impeached for pausing in December 2019. Vance argued that if Trump withheld the funding after becoming president, it would amount to the same fake violation of budget law from the first impeachment under markedly similar facts and circumstances. So he's basically making the claim that they're setting Trump up to where if he has money that he's going to have to use, and if he doesn't, they'll impeach him because it's the same fund that when he paused the last time he was impeached for. And then it shows that he got more support from it. The word impeach or remove does not appear at all. Down here it says Matthew Green, a politics professor at Catholic University from America, told Politifact that impeachment is basically irrelevant to the supplemental appropriations bill. Several things have to happen for Vance's impeachment scenario to come to fruition. The bill involves impeachment only if A, it becomes law, B, Trump is elected president, C, Democrats win control of the House, D, Trump decides to ignore the law, and E, Democrats decide to pursue impeachment in response. So again, the only thing that would lead to an impeachment here is if Trump just violated the law, which is what caused the whole bid to impeach him last time. But in their ruling, the bill does not target Trump or say anything about impeachments. It dictates how money should be spent. Experts say that it is the president's job to spend congressionally appropriated funds, so whoever is elected in 2024 will be responsible for spending the money. So it's money that the president will be required to spend, but it will affect Biden just as well as Trump. And it's a law that's passed by Congress dictating the appropriate of funds. So it's not really the same thing. It's definitely not an impeachment trap. And that's really all I'm going to go over with today. This episode's kind of running long enough as it is, I think, right now. It's not necessarily even the most exciting stuff in the world. The point is just to kind of show how important it is to really just verify what is being told. Because a lot of these politicians lie, and their goal is to win. And their goal is to make themselves look really good and make their opponents look really bad. And so you can see that there's a lot of mischaracterization, videos and words out of context, people making claims that are just not supported by facts. And that's why it's always important to just kind of do a little bit of research and just make sure that the person you're voting for, whomever they are, whatever party they belong to, is just being honest and being genuine and being their best selves as they're running for office, and is someone that you support in voting for things that you would want to support if you were the one voting for them in person. So yeah, that's it. Y'all have a great day, and as we're moving on to this election season, it should be very interesting to say the least. But yeah, you guys have a good day.